Hey, it's Carolyn Edge with Edgecraft, and today I'm showing you how to make these paper Easter eggs. Here are all of the supplies that you'll need. You'll need paper quilling strips, any colors will do. You can use traditional paper quilling strips, which come in packs that look like this. Or I cut my own strips using Neenah Astro Bright's paper. I've simply just cut these lengthwise into 1/4 inch strips, but again, you can use any width or any colors or any kind of paper quilling that you'd like. You'll need an Easter egg template, which is linked in the comments below. You'll want that printed on heavy cardstock so that it really holds its shape. You could also make your own egg shapes and make them in any size, but the ones that I'm using are 2 inches wide by about 3 inches long. We're not doing a lot of measuring in this particular video, but you might find a ruler handy if you would like to cut papers to a certain size. You'll need scissors, craft tweezers that look like this, and a quilling tool, either the slotted tool, which looks like this, or the needle tool. I'll be using the needle tool because it has a lot more versatility, but all of these designs can be done easily with the slotted tool, whichever you prefer. You will also need glue. I keep mine in a needle tip bottle like this, and I also keep it upside down in a shot glass with a damp paper towel at the bottom. Keeping it upside down keeps the glue right at the tip so that I don't have to shake it every single time, and the damp paper towel keeps the tip from drying out, which really helps avoid a lot of frustrations as I work. I'm using Aleene's Tacky Glue, which is my go-to, but any liquid glue you have will work. And this is an optional bonus thing, but I like to keep an old paintbrush with me while I work, and I keep that in a glass with a damp paper towel. That keeps it just wet enough for me to clean up loose glue, but it's not so wet as dunking it in water. Again, that's optional, but I do find it makes my life easier. You'll also need something to spread glue on. You can see here that I'm peeling glue off that had dried from a previous project. I like using these plastic sheets because they're reusable, as the glue just peels right off, as you saw. You can also use a paper plate or really any flat surface that you can spread glue on. So in this video, I'll be showing you how to combine 3 different shapes: the zigzags, both small and large, these dot shapes, which are called tight coils, and then how to use simple curved lines and combine those 3 shapes to create any kind of combination of designs that you'd like for your Easter egg. For some quilling designs, you really have to follow a strict pattern, but this one has a lot of flexibility. I'm basically going to show you these 3 shapes and then give you a few ideas at the end for how you can combine them in different ways. So you can follow my pattern exactly, or you can use your imagination and create your own. So you'll start by cutting out your Easter egg shapes. And again, you want these printed on pretty sturdy cardstock so that they hold their shape. I'm cutting inside the black line too, just to make sure that we don't get any of that on our finished product. And when I finish, you can see that a few of my edges are not exactly perfect. They're a little bit rough, but that's okay because we are going to glue the first strip of paper all the way around the edge. So that's okay if it's not perfect. So to get started, choose the color you'd like for your outline and just start to run it through your fingers, and you'll see that it starts to curl. And we're just going to apply a little bit of glue on one edge of the paper. As you can see, I'm doing it on the edge of the paper, not in the middle of it. And then press it against the Easter egg. I'm starting at the bottom of the Easter egg so that the seam is at the bottom, not the top. And you'll want to make sure this first part is really set before you move on, otherwise your paper will slide around. And to keep going, we are simply going to keep adding a little bit of glue, an inch or 2 at a time, right on the bottom edge of the paper. And again, just like we did before, simply press it against your paper Easter egg. And just keep going an inch or 2 of glue at a time, all the way around the Easter egg. Now you might find that there's a little bit of excess glue that you can see, and this is what I use my paintbrush for. I just kind of get it lightly damp on the paper towel and then clean up the excess glue and then kind of wipe that back into the paper towel. Of course, I'll change out the paper towel as it gets messy over time. You can also use your needle tool if you don't have a paintbrush on hand, just simply going around collecting that excess glue and wiping it off. All right, let's keep going with that outline color until we are all the way around the Easter egg. And then you'll simply trim off the excess, leaving a little bit of overlap. And then you'll just add a little bit more glue to make sure that seam is nice and closed. All right, here's what we've got so far. You can go around and check to make sure that your paper strip is nice and even all the way around. If you do happen to find any of your white bases jutting out, you could simply come along and trim it off with your scissors. All right, let's get started with some zigzag shapes. So I've got a small one and a large one, and you can just kind of see how they look differently inside the Easter egg. The outline of mine changed to blue, just ignore that. I was working with a few different examples here. So you can see how the small zigzag looks compared to the big one. It's going to be the same technique, just different sizes. So we're gonna start with one paper strip. Let's make the big one first. And we're just gonna fold it back. I'm not measuring here, but this one is about a 1/2 inch. So you'll fold it back, and then where it ended, you will simply fold that back into an accordion shape. And you will keep going back and forth. And after a few folds back and forth, you can see that the zigzag shape is starting to take form, but just keep going. And then after a few folds, you can start to hold it up to your Easter egg shape and see how it looks. I can tell that mine doesn't quite fit yet, so I'm going to keep going for a couple more folds. And then here I'm just pinching it all together to make sure those creases are nice and sharp. And then this is just kind of personal preference, but I like to look at the direction that I started, and I like to end my zigzag going in the same direction. So now I'm just holding it back up against my Easter egg to see how it fits. I think that's a good size, so I'm going to cut off the end. So I'm folding the last point to use that as a guide, and I will simply cut that off. And there is our large zigzag shape. So I'm just kind of playing with it now. You can use your tweezers or your hands to kind of spread it out and make it even. And now let's take it back over to our Easter egg and see how it fits. And mine does need spread out a little bit more, so I'm kind of flattening the points. And I think that looks good. So to make the smaller zigzag, it's going to be the same thing, except you are simply going to start by making a smaller fold. Again, I'm not measuring, but for reference, this one is about a 1/4 inch. And just like before, you are simply going to fold it back and forth over itself. I like this design because it's really simple and you don't even need quilling tools to do it. I don't know if you're anything like me. If I get a straw wrapper at a restaurant, I end up fidgeting with it anyway. So this kind of just reminds me of that. So after a few points, like before, I'm kind of just squishing them together to make sure those creases are nice and sharp. And I'll show you a trick here to use your tweezers to make sure you get nice and even folds. So you'll pinch down the last fold that you made, and then you will just fold the paper over the tweezers. I'll show you that again. So the last fold that we made, just sliding the tweezers all the way down. And now that you've got those as a guide, just fold the paper over. All right, let's speed this up. You just keep folding back and forth, back and forth. Obviously for this one, we're going to do a lot more folds because each one is smaller. And just like with the larger one, I'm just holding it up to the Easter egg once it's got a little bit of length to see how it looks. Folding a few more, and that looks like it's gonna be pretty good. Again, I started with a down fold, so I'm going to end with a down fold. Or, you could flip it and have them both facing up, as long as they're facing the same direction. All right, again, I'm folding over my last fold and using that as a guide for where to trim off the excess paper. So now let's see how it looks against our Easter egg and how it fits in. So this one's taking a little bit more playing with just because there are a lot more folds. I'm just evening it out, and I think I do want my ends to be facing up. So now let's glue. I'm using Aleene's tacky glue and I'm just going to spread some onto this plastic sheet. You can use a paper plate if you don't have a plastic sheet like this, and I'm going to use a craft squeegee to spread it thin. You can see how the glue just kind of peels off once it dries. It does the same from the plastic sheet, just peels off, which makes it reusable. Again, you can totally use a paper plate, and if you don't have a craft squeegee, you can also use the edge of your ruler to spread that glue thin, but you will need something to spread it out, just like this. Less is more when it comes to gluing for quilling, so look how thin that glue is. Trust me, it's going to be enough. If you have too much glue on your surface, it's going to make your Easter egg cardstock get really wrinkly and buckled, and it's also going to leave a lot of excess ugly glue. Before I glue, I'm just kind of checking to see where I want it to go and making sure that it fits. That looks pretty good, but it's not going to stay put until we glue it. So with our craft tweezers, I'm simply going to dip the piece into my glue, pressing down to make sure it's all set, and then slowly lift up, pulling from different points along the piece. Don't just grab it all in one go or it'll be a mess. So you can see it's got a nice even coating of glue on the bottom. And then we're just coming back to our Easter egg and slowly start to place it down. So again, I'm starting with one edge and then slowly placing it. I didn't just plunk the whole thing down in there. This way that gives me a little bit of room to move things around with my tweezers and make sure it's really where I want it to be before fully pressing it down. Next up, I'm making these simple curved lines by simply running the paper between my needle tool and my finger. And you can see that it's already started to curve and it looks perfect, ready to go for our Easter egg. So I'm just holding it up to the Easter egg and kind of measuring where I'd like to cut. I usually give myself a little bit of excess, that way I can go back and cut a little bit more off if needed. You know, if you cut it too short at first, you can't go back and add more, but you can always trim off excess. So I'm just playing with it, cutting off a little bit at a time and then going back to see how it fits. And I think that looks pretty good, so let's do another one. So again, I'm just running the paper between the needle tool and my finger, which softens it and gets it to curve, and then measuring it against the Easter egg, seeing if it fits, and trimming off excess if needed. And now we will glue those just like we did with the zigzag, taking our craft tweezers and lightly dipping them in the glue. And then gently placing them back on the Easter egg. Before it sets, now is the time to use your tweezers to move it around and smooth out that curve and get it set exactly where you would like it to be. From here, I'm just kind of improvising. I didn't really have a plan when I started. As I get going, I just kind of see like, oh, a yellow one will look good here. You can, again, follow my design, or you can use your imagination to combine these shapes into your own design. I'll show you how to make a tight rolled coil, which is those dot shapes, here in just a moment as well. But first I'm going to add my large zigzag because I think it's gonna look good here. So again, I'm just kind of measuring and placing and planning where I'd like it to go. I'm kind of playing with whether I'd like it to go facing up or down, and I think this way looks best. So let's dip that in the glue, just like we did with the other one. And I'm slowly lifting at different points until it easily lifts out. And to make sure it's centered, I started by putting down the middle points and setting those down, and then moving the outside points around again before the glue sets. And here's how we are looking so far. So I can also check the glue. I see that that wasn't quite set, so I'm simply going to add a little bit more glue with my needle tip bottle. You can also use your needle tool or a toothpick. And I'm just using my tweezers to make sure that is really set in place. I'm going around and checking, and I have a few more loose pieces, so I'm just going to add glue where it's needed and really press those down to make sure they're set. Next up, we'll make those tight rolled coils, and I recommend using the slotted tool if you are just learning quilling. As you can see, it has a slot in the middle of it, which will help you to grip the paper. So you'll just slide the paper into that slot, and you will slide your tool all the way down to the end of the paper strip and just start rolling it towards you. For this example, I'm rolling the entire strip. You may not want to roll the whole strip. You'll just want to see how it fits into your Easter egg, but I'll show you that in a second. First, just to show you what this tight coil looks like. When you finish it, you will simply slide it off of the tool. And we are going to glue the seam down with just a little bit of glue. Hold it down until it sets. And that is what our tight coil looks like. I'll show you now with the needle tool. Just like we did with the lines, you're going to soften the paper by running it between your needle tool and your finger. And you'll get your tool to the end of your paper strip and just start rolling the paper around the needle tool. And usually I find that once I have it started, I will use my fingers to roll the rest of the strip. And for this one, I'm not going to roll the entire paper. I'm going to hold it up against my design until it looks about the right size that I want it. So this looks pretty good, so I'll trim off the excess and then glue down the seam. And there's my tightly rolled coil. So now I'm just repeating that process to create more tight coils. So again, like I said, I did not measure these, but here's a little tip, is that when you roll your first one, you can use the excess paper that you cut off from it to measure against the other paper strips to cut those off to get them to the exact same size. So that's what I did here. So I've pre-cut those strips, and now I'm just rolling those tight coils, and you'll see that they are all the same size. So now I can place those into my design. And now it's time to glue those down. So just like we did before, we are dipping the base of those dots into the glue and placing them back on the Easter egg so they're set. All right, I've got lots more coils that I've created here using the same techniques as before. And again, I didn't really have a plan when I started. Just after placing those dots, I'm sort of improvising and saying, oh, you know, I think another purple curved line would look good here. So I'm gluing that in. And a yellow curved line for the bottom. And now I realized my middle was looking a little empty, so I created some yellow dots. And to make sure these are even, I started by gluing the middle one, then the outside ones, and then filling the middle two in between those two windows. And the top needed one more little thing. I tried a dot up there and I didn't really like it, so I'm adding one more small curved line up towards the top. And this one is done. Here is our finished Easter egg. So now I will show you how to take those three simple shapes and put them together in a variety of combinations to create different designs. For this one, I'm just using that simple curved line again, and I had this idea for the lines to sort of be swooping from one side to the other, so I'm just curving those lines and testing them to see where they go. And they won't really stay set until we glue them, so I need to get a few set to really create the base of my design. I wanted to create two lines that were closer together with a bigger space in the middle so that I can go back and add some tight coils, those dot shapes. So that's what I'm creating here. And now I'm creating a lot of tight coils in this purple color. I wanted to create some that were large, medium, and smaller to fit that kind of gradient. So I've got them all lined up and I'm simply filling in. And there you go, simple curved lines and tight coils, and we've got this design. Next up, for another variation, I'm creating small zigzags with 3 different colors, yellow, blue, and green, and I want those all to kind of fit together nicely in the middle of my design. Next up are some tight coils. And lastly, some curved lines for the top and bottom of this design. And there you go. I think this one is done. Here's one more look at all 3 of our designs. As you can see, with those 3 simple shapes, you can put them together into endless combinations. If you make this design, or if you have any questions, please feel free to drop a comment and I would love to help you out. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who you think would like it, and be sure to check back soon for more crafty videos.